Okay. So where do we see personalization working well in academia? So I think a lot of people were saying they're just at the start of their journey at the moment. And I think feeling a little bit intimidated about all the technology that's coming through. A lot of the people that I spoke to, they said their organizations were already quite focused around really giving their customers personal experiences, but not through technology just yet. More through focusing on who they are and giving them the right level of service. I think that what we spoke a lot about was the challenges, some of the challenges of embedding some of this new technology. People were saying that we've moved from B2B to B2C, and we've got a lot of legacy systems. So these publishers have been around for a very long time, and it's a real challenge to update some of these systems and get them to start talking to each other before we can advance to doing some fancy AI personalization. Another challenge was having the technical knowledge to leverage some of the systems that are coming down the line. And this is CRM and CDP. And some of the suggestions were some of the people in our group were using agencies to try and bring in some of these technical knowledge, and then running their first smart campaigns where they are using the data to do proper segmentation and really target individuals with advertising. I think people also found it a challenge to keep up with the developments. There's quite a few platforms out there, and to know which ones are good and which ones are worth the investment is quite tricky. Another barrier that people spoke about was people within the organization being quite set in their ways and just trying to deal with the existing challenges and changes and not wanting to adopt new things. And then limited budgets and resources were something else that was spoken about. In terms of how to advance, sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. Return on investment came out as the most important thing. So looking at these various tools and determining which are worth actually spending the money on to make a real tangible difference in my business. And then data was seen as the most important element in order to advance. So getting data in good shape. And then another thing in terms of being ready to advance is making sure that all the old systems, the legacy systems, are updated, and then also integrate, because at the moment they can operate quite separately. So integration is really important before we can really start to progress to AI-powered personalization. Did I miss anything out, my group?
Can't see any nodding or shaking of heads. So Ken, I think you've done a great job there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my group were up next. We definitely touched some of those same topics that you've mentioned, Ken. The big win that everyone saw for hyper-personalization was for researchers in terms of reading and cutting through the noise. So basically, you know, we don't want to bombard our audiences. So the opportunity in terms of this personalization is moving beyond even what personalization has done before in terms of thinking about trigger campaigns, for example, was one topic that we talked about. If we're just sending that out without using some of this AI-powered personalization, we're losing that opportunity to really think about, are they at that right point, or are we just guessing on in terms of, averages? So the opportunity to really think about ways that personalization can move us beyond what we're doing now. There was a lot under challenges for us too, and even for Stephanie, who was in my group, talking about what she had presented, described that as a long journey to get to what she had shared back. And certainly for the rest of the group, this is very much on the thinking rather than on what has already been achieved. There is a lot that teams have been doing to try and think about how to manually create this. So Stephanie gave the example of using Airtable to gather sort of sources of all these different data points too, but that things like Hum and other CDPs can bring together in a much better way. So also thinking about in terms of some of what you described, Kin, in terms of that the business buy-in, thinking about how to demonstrate that time saving, that improvement in some of the processes and systems is certainly something that came up. We also talked about the opportunity to consider what other CDPs were out there. Hum came up as one that's already really understanding what our industry is doing. So that's one win in favour of Hum, but the rest of the group haven't experimented with other CDPs. So we're certainly interested in hearing feedback from any of you who are experimenting with others. We also talked about the pushback, and actually for Silverchair and for Stephanie, actually what she described was really thinking through how pop-ups would be used in the context of what Silverchair is doing. So thinking about that kind of ethical delivery of what's relevant to users of the Silverchair site versus sending multiple emails that aren't necessarily what users have consented to receive. Other challenges that came up were specifically thinking about the quality of data, as Kin mentioned as well. The opportunity to get lots of departments to agree and collaborate on what is quite a technical and difficult process. The other really interesting one that came up in our group was about AI being considered a fad. So is it something that people really want to get behind, or is it just part of the hype curve? So thinking about how to really continue to educate teams on what AI personalization is enabling, and use that to build some momentum around doing some testing. And Lauren at Web of Science gave a great example of how they are doing some human versus AI testing to actually showcase what is working in terms of segmentation. So how does the human segmentation for a campaign compare to what the AI is pulling to target, and good results so far. I think that was everything from my group. Anybody want to shout in on anything else? Awesome.
Thanks, Ritu.
Dita, over to you.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I will try and whisk through this. I think very similar themes, by the way. So I don't want to repeat some of the previously mentioned things, but so we also talked about limitations around data and work need to be done cleaning data, and the need to cut through noise. What was interesting that came up where we have the technology, which should enable us to scale our communications and segmentations, etc., that actually sometimes is the problem, because for bigger companies, I think Helen was talking about Springer Nature, when they have over 2,500 journals, doing that scaling is actually quite a challenge. So we discussed that having smaller user cases and experimenting and building out from there is almost the way forward, and moving from a way of doing campaign by campaign towards a multifaceted touchpoint journey can be very challenging because of all the layers in that communication and figuring that out. We also talked about how CDPs are used a lot nowadays for read and publish agreements and targeting authors to try and publish. So quite a few of the publishers were using them primarily for that. But also scaling is a problem here, because when you have 400 agreements or even more, where do you concentrate? Obviously the larger ones first, but it is tricky. Rebecca from Clarivate said that they obviously got the segmentation down quite well, but they're trying to look at how to follow users through different platforms, and how to bring that journey and extend that journey forward, and would like to know more about how others do that. So I think that might be a really interesting topic for our next one of our next session. And that we need to give customers a cleaner entry point into our communications. So challenges, we talked about also understanding what can be achieved, and also understanding bringing this technology in, scaling it, the knowledge gaps, the technology, the resources, the commitment that has to go into it, as well as some others mentioned before, bringing others along on this journey. So we talked about how difficult can be is to convince, for example, editorial colleagues, because they still want to do, either because they think AI is a fad, or because they want to do things manually because that's what they're used to. So there's a lot of change management that's involved. And one thing that we also mentioned is silos and our dependency marketing on other departments such as technology, platform, or legal when it comes to cookie policies, etc. So as a conclusion, we also came to the conclusion that we need to lead with data, and data should be able to tell us where to invest next and where to go next, and use as a convincing argument. That was it.
Super,
Anything I
thank you.
missed? Okay.
Some shaking of heads. Annabelle, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So in group 4, very similar conversations, but we started off just having a bit of a reflection on where we were all at with this type of thing in our organisation. It ranged from FOMO for some of the smaller organisations, where at the moment this kind of tool feels a little bit out of reach. To OUP, certainly we have been using, we're starting to use Hum, but we had a very slow build. It took us 7 months to sort of pilot it first, and that's sort of more around how we integrate this kind of tool, which is incredibly sophisticated, but it's almost taking baby steps to make sure that we kind of like get the information we need to, the expertise. Really, it's a massive learning curve, and then of course integrating it into quite a big marketing team. And a team that's transforming as well, and the kind of culture change around moving from a very broadcast kind of environment with emails and social to this kind of always on behavior driven type of tool, which of course is what we know we want to do. We want to meet researchers where they're at, rather than sending things at them and hope they read it and they're at the right point in their journey. But it's quite a big challenge, quite a big culture change, and we want to we're learning as we go. So yeah, lots of different kind of thoughts about integrating a tool like this, excitement, but also a bit of trepidation there as well. We did talk about data. Definitely it's one of the challenges of being in a big organization, having all sorts of data all over the place that's very difficult to integrate into a system. And Ashley was talking about how she was really focusing on getting the data ready before she sort of went too far down the line with a tool like this, which I think is very smart if you can do that. What else? So yeah, the uses of it, people were definitely excited about some of the uses of it from the sort of journal development, editorial side, getting into that segmentation tool, which is really powerful, and that's certainly something I think marketers will love to get into once we can sort of give them access to that. To the commercial side of things, so engaging institutions, librarians, really helping them get to places they need to get to quickly, maybe not relying on navigation of websites, just getting them straight there, and really, getting really hyper targeted when it comes to like curating content for librarians or researchers, having really surfaced some of that stuff. There was some interesting, Charlotte mentioned a really interesting thing that Scopus are doing. I think there's a keynote at recent UKSG where they were ring fencing their own data and using that for having like the tools like ChatGPT, or I don't actually remember which tool it was, Charlotte, but kind of training the tool with ring fence data, which was quite an interesting. Obviously, we're in the business of protecting our quality data and making sure that that is the thing that is being used to when we do utilize these AI tools. So that was part of the discussion as well. Yeah, we just had we sort of ended up having a bit more broad discussion about using other tools, and there's some experimentation with free tools again for some perhaps organizations that have less access to invest in these kind of bigger tools for the time being, experimenting with free tools. I mean, I know Otter.ai was one that someone was using at a conference to record conversations. And of course, the fact that AI itself is just embedded in all the tools we're using already and have been using for years, and suddenly you see it pop up and you realise that you're surrounded. And it's actually making our lives easier in our existing, sort of personalising the experience for us and making it easier for us to do our usual work. So that also came up. I've probably missed something, so do shout room 4 if there's anything else to add to that.
Amazing, super summaries. I'm going to hand back over to Zita to wrap up and round us out. But thank you, everyone.
Okay, so any last minute questions before I wrap up? Please shout out or put it in the chat. Thank you, Helen. I think you put that you use as implementing segment as a CDP for your organization. Is anyone implementing anything, looking at any other CDPs, as this is the topic of our conversation, other than harm or segment? No? Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of these tools out there. So if anyone has anything to share, you can also just let us know later. But yeah, thank you very much. So we came to the end of our session. Time just flew by. So as we conclude the AI-powered personalization in marketing, focusing on CDPs, we are reminded how important the impact of tailored content is, and personalization is in our marketing. And the discussion today underscored this. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to Rory and Stephanie for your presentation. Thank you so much for your insights and expertise. And yes, loads of clapping coming up. And as co-chairs, we put a lot of effort into making sure these sessions are useful, but of course, they would not be meaningful without your contribution. So we are very grateful to all of you for your participation and your active engagements, for sharing your knowledge and perspective. So thank you so much, because together, hopefully we can shape a more responsive and impactful future for our marketing. Thank you for being part of this conversation, and we will be working on our next session, which will take place shortly after the summer holidays, and we'll communicate as usual in due course. So thanks everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thanks, Zita.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Nita.
you.
Thank you. Bye.